Usually when we talk about a nation's critical infrastructure, there's this expectation of impenetrable
Right,
fortresses.
absolutely. We want to believe in that.
Yeah, you imagine these massive, climate-controlled server farms buried inside a mountain somewhere.
With the biometric scanners and the laser grid. Yeah.
Exactly. You picture teams of government analysts in crisp suits just, monitoring glowing screens in a room that requires a retinal scan just to get in the door.
It's a very comforting Hollywood image.
It is. We have this collective assumption that the digital perimeter of a sovereign state is built of just absolute, undeniable steel. Like, you are either on the outside looking at a concrete wall or you are on the inside. It's a clean binary.
Yeah, we desperately want to believe in that structural integrity.
Yeah.
I mean, it is deeply comforting to assume that our most sensitive data, our the tax records, our national security logistics, our physical identities, are locked behind a digital vault door that simply cannot be breached by an average person.
Right. But then you step into the raw, unfiltered world of underground Latin American cyber networks, and you realize that vault door you've been trusting, it's actually just a bead curtain.
A bead curtain is the perfect way to put it.
You can just push right through it. We are looking at a defensive landscape today that is terrifyingly fragile, and it totally shatters that illusion of security.
It really does.
Oh.
It forces you to confront the reality of a systemic mirage. I mean, the architecture looks intimidating from a distance, sure, but up close, it's held together by duct tape and negligence.
Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today, we are not looking at a polished corporate white paper.
No, definitely not.
And we aren't analyzing a neatly edited, sanitized mainstream news segment either. Our source material today is entirely raw. It is volatile.
Highly volatile.
It's an unedited, multi-hour audio recording of a live online space, originally hosted on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
This space spontaneously brought together this underground network of Latin American hackers, commercial spyware developers, cybersecurity experts, and even independent journalists.
It's incredible that this even exists publicly.
It really is. We're talking about the real digital Wild West, and you are getting a front row seat to an ecosystem most people don't even know exists.
The primary source itself is just this incredible artifact. I mean, you are hearing people who actively build the tools to dismantle infrastructure, talking to the people who are tasked with defending it, all in the same unmoderated digital room.
And we're listening to this raw, unverified audio today because the technical realities they accidentally reveal while arguing, and they argue a lot, are undeniably real.
Very real.
Now, I want to pause here and be upfront about the context of this recording because this is important.
Yeah, we need to set the boundaries here.
The hackers and developers in this space make some incredibly wild, explosive, and entirely unproven political accusations.
Extremely heavy allegations.
Right. They directly accuse the current Mexican government, specifically naming President Claudia Sheinbaum. They name politicians, alleged narco-traffickers, and even claim that U.S. intelligence agencies like the CIA and the NSA are, manipulating these networks.
Which is a huge claim to make casually on a live audio space.
Massive. And so, to you listening, we aren't here to validate their politics. We are not taking sides, left or right. And we certainly haven't independently verified these massive geopolitical claims.
No, that's not our goal today.
We are simply decoding the tape. We are examining the technical vulnerabilities and the incredible subculture these individuals operate in exactly as they discussed it.
And honestly, the contrast in the recording is what makes it so vital to analyze.
Mhm.
On one hand, you have individuals who possess the technical capability to plunge a city into darkness or, expose the private communications of millions.
Yeah.
And they are bickering with each other like teenagers in a high school cafeteria.
It's wild. The name calling, the egos flaring.
Old grudges just spilling out in real time. But if you listen past the petty drama, the underlying subtext reveals a massive systemic failure in government cybersecurity. It's the sheer banality of the vulnerability that stands out.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's look at the very first major revelation from this tape, which centers around a bespoke piece of software called Fleckery R7.
Right, Fleckery R7.
This tool was created by a Dominican developer in the space who goes by the handle Mr. Ban. And listening to him casually describe the architecture of this tool is, it's chilling. It's not some dusty old computer virus from the 90s.
Far from it. Mr. Ban is quite open about the evolution of Fleckery R7. He explains that it originally started out as a hybrid spyware tool, something designed primarily to just observe and report back.
Like a digital peeping Tom.
Exactly. but it has morphed significantly. He describes it now as a complete RAT. For those unfamiliar with the terminology, that stands for Remote Access Trojan.
A Trojan horse. So you think you're downloading a harmless PDF or like a software update, but hidden inside is the actual malicious payload.
Exactly. But RAT is a very specific type of payload. Unlike a standard virus that might just delete files and replicate itself, a remote access Trojan establishes a persistent, hidden backdoor communication channel.
Between the victim's computer and the attacker.
Yes, between the victim and the attacker's command and control server. Once it is installed, the attacker has the exact same level of control over that machine as if they were physically sitting in front of the keyboard.
Wow.
But Fleckery R7 is not just a standard R8. It has integrated ransomware capabilities and acts as a highly sophisticated information stealer.
Okay, we need to break down exactly what that means for a user. If it has ransomware capabilities, it doesn't just sit there quietly watching you.
No, it can actively lock you out.
Right. It can encrypt your entire hard drive, scramble all your family photos, your financial documents, your work projects, and then demand a cryptocurrency payment in exchange for the decryption key.
And the mathematical reality of modern ransomware encryption is just brutal. They use military-grade encryption standards like AES 256.
Which means what, exactly, for the average person?
It means if you don't have the specific cryptographic key held by the attacker, all the computing power on Earth couldn't guess that password before the sun burns out.
Wait, really?
Yes, your data is mathematically inaccessible to you. It's gone.
That's game over. And what about the stealer component? How does that work in tandem with the RAT?
A stealer is designed to automate the extraction of high-value data before the ransomware even triggers.
Oh, so it robs you before it locks the door.
Precisely. So
Yeah.
before Mr. Band's software locks your computer, it silently siphons out your browser cookies, your saved passwords, your session tokens.
Session tokens, those are huge, right? Because that bypasses two-factor authentication.
Yes, entirely.
Can you explain how that works? Because I think people rely heavily on two-factor, thinking it makes them bulletproof.
It's a common misconception. When you log into your email and check the box that says, "Remember me on this device," the website leaves a tiny file of session token on your browser.
So you don't have to use your phone to verify your identity every single time you open a new tab.
Right, it's for convenience.
Yeah.
But if Fleckery R7 steals that token and the attacker loads it onto their own browser, the website assumes the attacker is you.
Oh my God.
They don't need your password. They don't need your phone to get a text message code. They just walk right into your accounts.
That is terrifying. And Mr. Band notes that they've actively moved away from targeting mobile devices to focus heavily on macOS, Linux, and Windows environments.
Yeah, he was very specific about that shift.
Which is counterintuitive, right? Why the shift? You'd think everyone is on their phones all the time, so mobile would be the primary target.
You would think so, but it comes down to the architecture of the operating systems and where the real financial value lies.
Okay, break that down for me.
So mobile operating systems like iOS and modern Android are heavily sandboxed.
Sandbox
Meaning every app operates in its own isolated little bubble. He has a very hard time interacting with other apps or the core operating system without explicit, constant user permission.
like when my iPhone asks if an app can track my location.
Exactly. It's hard to build a persistent RAT in that environment because the OS is constantly fighting it. Desktop and server environments, Windows, Linux, Mac OS are much more open.
And that's where the money is.
Exactly. It's where the massive enterprise databases are kept. It's where the corporate intellectual property lives. It's where the massive payouts are.
So once Fleckery R7 is deployed on one of these desktop or server environments, it can entirely control the victim's device.
Total control.
It can extract those files. It can spy via hidden, silent access to the laptop's camera and microphone. And here's the part that should keep IT administrators awake at night. Mr. Band specifically designed this tool to actively bypass modern enterprise security defenses.
Yes, this is the kicker.
He casually mentions that it evades XDR, EDR, and standard antivirus programs.
This is where the engineering of Fleckery R7 becomes highly sophisticated. Standard antivirus programs are largely signature-based. They have a massive dictionary of known bad code. If a file lands on your computer and its code matches the signature in the dictionary, the antivirus flags it.
It's like a digital wanted poster.
That's a great way to put it. But EDR, endpoint detection and response, and XDR, which is extended detection and response, are much more advanced.
They're looking for behavior, not just a mugshot.
Exactly. They monitor the system to see if a program is doing something suspicious, like trying to modify core registry keys, or suddenly attempting to encrypt thousands of files at once.
So how does Fleckery R7 get past that?
To evade XDR and EDR, a developer like Mr. Ban has to utilize techniques like polymorphism.
Polymorphism, meaning it changes shape.
Yes, where the malware constantly changes its own code structure so its signature never looks the same twice, where they use living off the land techniques.
Living off the land, that sounds like survivalism.
It kind of is. It's where the malware doesn't bring its own malicious tools, but instead hijacks legitimate built-in administrative tools already on your computer like PowerShell in Windows to do the dirty work. The security software sees a trusted Windows program running, so it doesn't sound the alarm.
Okay, so think of Fleckery R7 not just as a digital lockpick. It's a master key that also disables the alarm system, silences the guard dogs, and sets up a hidden camera inside the vault, all while leaving absolutely zero fingerprints.
That's entirely accurate.
And the terrifying part is how this is discussed in the audio. They aren't whispering about this on some encrypted, hidden Tor network forum. They're discussing it openly on a public social media audio space as a commercial product.
What's fascinating here is the normalization of this economy. It's a massive takeaway. This isn't just a hobbyist writing code in a basement. This is a customized, client-negotiated software business.
He treats it like a legitimate startup.
He really does. Mr. Ban treats it like a SaaS company software as a service. He mentions that features are often tailored to the specific requests of the buyer.
But I have a major issue with how Mr. Ban tries to spin this in the audio. He talks about ethical selling.
Oh, yes. The ethical justification.
Right. He claims that because Fleckery R7 is so devastatingly powerful, he conducts interviews with potential buyers. He vets his clients to ensure the tool isn't being sold to script kiddies. You know, amateur hackers who just buy pre-made tools to spy on their ex-partners.
Right.
He implies that the incredibly high price tag he charges keeps it out of the wrong hands. But how can anyone truly control a weapon of this magnitude once the transaction is complete?
The short answer is they can't. They absolutely can't. The psychological justification used by the developer here is fascinating. It's a classic case of compartmentalization.
Because he knows what it's used for, right?
Oh, he knows exactly what it's being used for.
Yeah.
He acknowledges quite openly that the tool can absolutely be used for what he calls dirty political campaigns. He admits clients buy it to extract dirt on political opponents or to monitor journalists.
It's absurd. He justifies his creation by arguing that any espionage tool can do this. He shifts the moral weight entirely from the creator of the weapon to the purchaser.
Exactly. He uses this vetting process and the high price point as a sort of ethical shield to sleep at night. He convinces himself that because he only sells to professionals or state actors, he isn't responsible for the fallout.
It's like an arms dealer selling a heat-seeking missile and saying, well, I only sell my missiles to people who can afford them and who promise to be really responsible during their targeted assassinations, so my hands are clean.
It's a very convenient logic.
Very convenient. Once that code is out in the wild, you have zero control over how it is reverse-engineered, leaked, or repurposed. And this highlights a chilling reality for you, the listener.
Yeah, this is where it hits home.
You might be wondering why you should care about a piece of software named Fleckery R7 created in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
You should care because of high-end, highly customizable spyware that can actively bypass standard enterprise security is this readily available. If it operates openly as a bespoke business, then the baseline privacy of the average citizen is highly precarious.
Without a doubt.
The security your company, your bank, or your local government relies on is being actively outpaced by independent developers selling their wares on X.
It completely shatters that illusion of the vault door we talked about. If independent developers are building and selling digital weapons this sophisticated, the immediate question is, how are major governments defending against them?
Well, according to the sources in this audio, the answer is incredibly bleak.
Very bleak.
They aren't defending themselves at all. In fact, they are leaving the front door wide open, taking the door off the hinges and putting up a welcome sign.
It's worse than we thought.
The audio paints an absolutely devastating picture of Mexico's digital infrastructure. A hacker in the space who goes by Tony Soprano bluntly describes the Mexican government's systems as a massive hack the box.
Right, Hack the Box. For listeners outside the cybersecurity world, Hack the Box is a famous, gamified online platform.
Like a training simulator?
Exactly. It is a public training ground where cybersecurity students and professionals practice their penetration testing skills on intentionally vulnerable virtual machines. They tried to find hidden files, called flags, to prove they compromised the system.
Okay.
So Tony Soprano was stating that the actual live production infrastructure of a sovereign nation is functionally indistinguishable from a beginner's practice playground.
That is insane. And the specific vulnerabilities they list are staggering. They aren't talking about incredibly complex nation-state level zero-day exploits. They are pointing to foundational, almost embarrassing failures.
Basic IT hygiene failures.
Yes. Tony mentions a complete lack of budget allocated for cybersecurity, a total failure to segregate networks, zero patching of known software vulnerabilities, missing or expired web security certificates, and a total absence of basic routine security testing.
Let's examine what a lack of network segregation actually means in practice, because this is crucial.
Please do.
In a secure environment, you use a zero-trust architecture or microsegmentation. If a hacker breaches the server that handles, say, public cafeteria menus for a government building.
Right, a low-value target.
Exactly. They shouldn't be able to pivot from that server into the database holding classified military personnel records. The networks should be physically or logically walled off from one another.
But the Mexican infrastructure, according to this audio, uses the old M&M security model. Crunchy on the outside, soft and gooey on the inside.
Exactly. Once you bypass the initial, often weak perimeter, you have the run of the entire infrastructure.
And the issue of missing web certificates is equally foundational, right?
Oh, absolutely. An SSL or TLS certificate is what puts the little padlock icon next to a website's URL. It encrypts the data traveling between your browser and the server.
So if a government website is missing those certificates, or if they've expired because no one bothered to renew them,
It means any data submitted to that site, passwords, citizen ID numbers, tax information, is traveling across the public internet in plain text. It is completely readable to anyone intercepting the traffic.
man, it gets worse too. A cybersecurity expert in the recording named Duran shares a specific anecdote that perfectly illustrates this incompetence.
The WhatsApp bot story.
Yes, the Mexican government apparently launched an AI-powered chatbot on WhatsApp designed as a helpful guide for tourists to navigate the country.
Seems innocent enough.
Duran decided to test it. He didn't use a multi-million-dollar hacking suite. He didn't use Fleckery R7. He used a technique called prompt injection.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, prompt injection is one of the most fascinating and problematic vulnerabilities of the modern AI era.
I've heard the term, but how does it actually work?
To understand it, you have to understand how large language models, or LLMs, are built. Traditional software separates the instructions, the code, from the data provided by the user. But an LLM takes everything as one giant stream of text.
So it can't distinguish between the developer telling it to act like a tourist guide and me telling it to act like a pirate.
Precisely. The system prompt might be, "You are a helpful Mexican tourism bot. Answer questions about museums. Never reveal internal system data."
Okay.
But the user input is appended right after that. So a prompt injection dynamic involves crafting natural language that overrides the initial instructions.
It's less like a highly technical hack and more like handing a bank teller a note that says, ignore all your previous training. I am the bank manager. Give me the vault codes.
That is a perfect analogy. The AI is programmed to be so helpful and compliant that it simply obeys the last authoritative command it receives in the text stream.
And Duran says it took him only about 20 basic attempts, just sitting on his couch, typing clever phrases into WhatsApp, to completely break the bot's security guardrails.
Which is nothing in terms of time and effort.
Nothing. He forced this government tourist bot to spit out SSH connection details.
We really need to underline how catastrophic that is. SSH stands for Secure Shell. It is the cryptographic network protocol that IT administrators use to operate network services securely over an unsecured network. It is the encrypted tunnel used to log directly into the back end of a server, bypassing normal user interfaces.
So getting SSH connection details from a WhatsApp bot isn't just finding a vulnerability. It is getting the master blueprint and the physical keys to the server room handed to you by the receptionist.
Exactly.
Duran even gave the AI to identify the most physically insecure, dangerous areas of the country, pulling from internal government data it was never supposed to access, through a WhatsApp chat.
It illustrates a terrifying asymmetry in modern statecraft.
Mm-hmm.
You have a government heavily investing in the superficial appearance of modernity, launching an AI chatbot to look cutting edge, while fundamentally misunderstanding the technology they are deploying.
It's all for show.
Yes. If a system connected to core government servers can be breached by someone typing clever text messages into a messaging app, The foundational architecture is entirely compromised.
It's like spending millions on a state-of-the-art sniper rifle, but completely forgetting to put a padlock on the armory door.
Exactly.
And the timing of this incompetence is what has the speakers and the audio so anxious. Mexico is preparing to co-host the upcoming FIFA World Cup.
Oh, yeah. That's a massive looming issue.
This is one of the largest, most scrutinized, and heavily trafficked global events on the planet. And the hackers in this space are predicting absolute chaos. They are forecasting massive digital system failures, easily cloned digital tickets, and severely compromised infrastructure.
Their anxiety is well-founded. For an event of that scale, the digital logistics are just as critical as the physical logistics.
Right, it's not just about stadium seating.
Not at all. You are managing millions of digital identities, payment processing gateways, transportation grid management, and emergency response coordination.
But according to the hackers, the government is relying entirely on physical military checkpoints for security, with absolutely no viable digital contingency plans.
Which is a disaster waiting to happen.
Imagine you, the listener, are traveling to a massive global event, trusting your passport data, your credit card information, and your physical safety to a system that the underground community literally views as a public training dummy. It is a sobering thought.
It is. And this vacuum of defensive capability is where those highly charged political allegations enter the conversation. The speakers claim that while the defensive infrastructure is crumbling, the government is highly active on the offensive side.
Right. The claim is that they aren't spending money to protect you, but they are spending millions to watch you.
Yes.
Mr. Ban explicitly alleges that the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, purchased high-end cyber espionage software. He claims this purchase was facilitated through a Dominican politician, an alleged narco-trafficker named Brian Miguel Vargas Nunez, referred to in the audio as El Chivo, along with a developer named Domingo.
Furthermore, the speakers in the space claim that this systemic weakness is an open secret on the geopolitical stage.
Which opens a whole other can of worms.
Absolutely. They allege that U.S. intelligence agencies, naming the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, and even referencing international units like Israel's elite unit 8200, already have these Latin American government networks entirely compromised.
The implication is that these foreign intelligence agencies are just sitting silently inside these broken systems. They aren't fixing the vulnerabilities, obviously, because they want to maintain their persistent access.
Right. Intelligence agencies thrive on 0 days and unpatched vulnerabilities.
They are fully aware of the flaws, just waiting for the right geopolitical moment to leverage that access.
If a foreign government leaves the door open, an intelligence agency isn't going to close it. They are going to install a camera in the hallway. Now, again, these are unverified claims made by the individuals in the recording.
Right. We don't know if the CIA is sitting in the Mexican government servers.
We don't. But functionally, what this conversation outlines is a massive power vacuum. When a state's digital defense is virtually non-existent, and when offensive capabilities are allegedly prioritized over citizen protection, it creates an environment entirely devoid of security and accountability.
And nature abhors a vacuum. When you have a government leaving the doors wide open like this, the people who walk through those doors aren't always foreign spies.
No, sometimes it's a domestic free-for-all.
Exactly. Where institutions fail, opportunists, vigilantes, and activists rush in to fill the void. And that brings us to the actual people on this audio, because when you hold the keys to a broken kingdom, who decides how those keys are used?
That tension is the catalyst for an incredible, explosive confrontation captured live in the audio involving a highly controversial figure named Hector Lopez.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This part of the tape is wild. You can hear the static, the overlapping voices, the sheer venom in how they speak to each other.
The hostility is palpable.
Hector runs an organization called OYEC, and he loudly, repeatedly claims to be an ethical hacker. He portrays himself as a protector of systems, a white knight in the digital realm.
The rest of the community in this X space vehemently, aggressively disagrees.
The confrontation is sparked when Mr. Ban reveals that to settle a long-standing feud regarding Hector's actual technical skills, he challenged Hector to a $25,000 live programming duel.
A digital shootout at high noon.
Essentially, yes. The parameters were incredibly specific. They were to write complex code live, on stream, using languages like C, C#, Python, or Golang, with a $5,000 deposit placed in escrow by each party just to prove they were serious and had the capital.
Let's talk about those specific languages, because they weren't chosen at random.
Yeah, why challenge someone in C#, Python, and Golang?
Each language represents a different mastery of modern cyber operations. Python is the absolute backbone of rapid scripting, data analysis, and increasingly, AI manipulation. It's what you use to write a quick, dirty script to scrape a database. C# is deeply integrated into the Microsoft ecosystem. If you are targeting enterprise environments, Active Directories, or corporate Windows networks, you need to understand C# to manipulate those systems natively.
And Golang. We hear a lot about Go in modern malware analysis.
Golang, or Go, was developed by Google. It is highly valued in the hacking community right now for a few reasons. First, it compiles into a single executable binary,
Meaning what?
meaning you don't need to install external libraries on the victim's machine to run the malware. It carries everything it needs.
Oh, that's efficient.
Very. Second, it is cross-platform. You can write code once and compile it for Windows, Mac, or Linux easily.
Makes sense.
And third, it handles concurrency running multiple tasks at exactly the same time, incredibly well, which is perfect for malware that needs to aggressively encrypt a hard drive as fast as possible before it is detected. Challenging someone in these three languages is asking them to prove they understand the entire modern attack surface.
But according to Mr. Ban, Hector completely ignored the technical challenge. He refused to put the money in escrow and instead opted to send insulting private messages and alleged racial slurs.
Which really set the stage for what happens next.
Yeah, because right in the middle of this discussion, Hector actually enters the live audio space.
And all pretense of professional discourse evaporates.
It's just chaos.
Instead of addressing the coding challenge or defending his technical merits, Hector resorts to hurling obscenities. He refuses to answer direct, highly specific technical questions posed by the other developers.
And the room turns on him. They don't hold back. They accuse this self-proclaimed ethical hacker of severe, undeniable cybercrimes.
Very specific crimes, too.
Yes, they accuse him of stealing massive databases from a Mexican government portal-alpha.god.mx and selling the citizen data in a private Telegram channel.
That's a massive allegation.
They accuse him of working with a notorious entity known as H1, and most disturbingly, they accuse him of using doxing and extortion against women who rejected his personal advances, specifically naming a victim on the audio.
It is a brutal unmasking. It culminates in the community holding a live, real-time vote and using the platform's moderation tools to effectively kick him out of the digital space.
They just voted him off the island?
Literally. But this confrontation with Hector isn't just interpersonal reality show drama. It serves as a crucial catalyst for a deep philosophical debate within the audio about the true nature of hacktivism versus cybercrime.
Exactly. With Hector gone, Mel, who is the host of the original audio space, along with others like Tony Soprano, start to articulate their worldview. They argue forcefully that underground groups operating in Latin America, like the Mexican hacker mafia and Cronus team, are not criminals.
Right. They argue they are hacktivists.
Their logic is rooted in exposure. They argue that by breaking into these incredibly fragile government systems, extracting the data and dumping it publicly, they are acting as the ultimate necessary whistleblowers.
They believe they are exposing the flaws that the government desperately wants to hide, effectively forcing the state's hand to acknowledge the problem and allocate the budget to fix it.
Mel states this philosophy very clearly. He argues that there is absolutely no such thing as a white hat or black hat hacker.
Which is a controversial stance in the industry.
Very.
Yeah.
He views those terms purely as corporate marketing labels designed to sanitize the cybersecurity industry and make it palatable for Fortune 500 companies. In his view, a hacker is simply a hacker.
The code is neutral.
Right. You are defined strictly by your actions, your targets, and the results you produce, not by a self-proclaimed ethical title that you slap on your LinkedIn profile.
To broaden the perspective on this, a speaker from Colombia jumps into the space to add historical and international context. He brings up a group called Handala.
Handala. Who are they?
Handala is a well-known Palestinian hacktivist group, symbolized by a cartoon of a voiceless 10-year-old boy. The Colombian speaker uses this comparison to explain the unique psychology of Latin American cyber undergrounds.
That's a deep comparison.
It is. He argues that cyber attacks in these regions shouldn't just be viewed through the Western lens of financial data theft or corporate espionage. They're deeply rooted in political resilience. They're acts of resistance against regimes that the citizens view as dictatorial, corrupt, or fundamentally incompetent.
It echoes the history of groups like Anonymous or LUSEC, but with a much sharper, hyperlocal geopolitical edge. But I have to push back on this hacktivist justification.
Oh, absolutely. We need to look at the collateral damage.
Let's play devil's advocate here. Let's say I want to prove to the city council that your specific neighborhood is dangerously unpatrolled and the police are failing.
Okay.
So to prove my point, I walk up to your house in the middle of the night and I throw a massive brick through your front window.
I wouldn't be very happy about that.
Right. I've proven my point. The police didn't stop me. The vulnerability is real. But you, the innocent citizen sleeping inside, are still left with a shattered window, a violated sense of security, and the cold reality that someone accessed your private sanctuary.
Yeah.
Is that true activism? Or is it an ego trip disguised as a public service?
This raises an important question. It is a profound dilemma, and the analogy holds weight. Mel's argument that the tools are neutral is technically true. A line of Golang code has no conscience. A prompt injection string has no morality.
The tool doesn't care who uses it.
Exactly. The intent and the application are what define the action. But the collateral damage of hacktivism is very rarely absorbed by the state. It is almost always absorbed by the citizen.
That's the tragic part.
When a database is dumped to prove a point, it is the citizen's tax records, medical histories, and home addresses that are suddenly searchable on the dark web.
It forces you, the listener, to ask yourself, who actually protects your data? When the government demonstrates the sheer incompetence we saw with the prompt injection WhatsApp bot, are you comfortable with underground, unelected vigilantes holding the keys to the kingdom just to teach the government a lesson?
Because ultimately, they are using your private life as the ammunition in their political war.
Exactly. And this friction between the state, the hacker, and the citizen isn't isolated just to Mexico. As the audio continues, the geographic scope of the conversation expands.
Yeah, we move further south.
We look further south and see how other governments weaponize their own digital incompetence, not just to ignore the problem, but to actively silence dissidents and scapegoat the innocent.
The audio introduces a new voice from Uruguay, a journalist and hacker named Daniel Hill.
Daniel Hill. And his story is wild.
It really is. Daniel shares a harrowing, deeply personal story that parallels the systemic failures in Mexico, but with a much darker judicial outcome. Daniel states that he was actually the first person in Uruguay to be sent to prison for a cybercrime back in 2017.
The first person.
Yes, and the way he describes the investigative process that put him behind bars is an absolute masterclass in forensic incompetence.
He details a judicial and law enforcement system that fundamentally did not understand the technology they were attempting to police. The gap between legislation and technical reality was massive.
It's astounding.
He describes police executing search warrants on his property, but the warrants had entirely the wrong names on them.
And the physical evidence collection was a joke. He describes investigators confusing basic, everyday USB thumb drives, the kind you buy at a grocery store to hold family photos, with complex, specialized hacking hardware.
That's just embarrassing.
It paints a picture of a state mechanism that is eager to project authority and prosecute a perceived threat, but is entirely lacking in the basic technical literacy required to conduct a digital forensics investigation.
Because in digital forensics, doing it right is everything right.
Absolutely. The chain of custody and the precise imaging of hardware, creating a bit-by-bit copy of a drive without altering a single 0 or 1, is paramount. If the police don't even know what they are looking at, the integrity of the entire investigation is compromised.
And Daniel notes the incredible, tragic irony of his situation. He points out that Uruguay, as a nation, receives millions and millions of dollars in international loans. He specifically names the Inter-American Development Bank and the World Bank.
That's a lot of funding.
Right. These are massive funds earmarked specifically for technological innovation, digital infrastructure upgrades, and cybersecurity readiness. Yet, he claims this money is essentially stolen, mismanaged, or lost to bureaucratic corruption because the actual operational government systems remain abysmal.
He provides a striking recent example to prove his point. He discusses a recent event where the Uruguayan Ministry of Defense was hacked.
The Ministry of Defense?
Yes, and when confronted with this breach, the minister held a press conference and actively downplayed the severity of the intrusion, publicly calling the hacker stupid.
Which is just begging for retaliation.
It is universally considered a fatal error of hubris in the cybersecurity world. You do not taunt a threat actor who has already proven they can bypass your perimeter.
No, you patch the hole. You don't insult them.
Exactly. But Daniel notes that to cover for these systemic, embarrassing failures, the state inevitably looks for fall guys. It needs a narrative that the problem is solved.
And so they look for a scapegoat.
Yes. He mentions a recent heartbreaking case where an 18-year-old kid was thrown into preventative prison for 6 months, serving as a convenient, powerless scapegoat for the government's own inability to secure its defense networks.
It's easier to lock up a teenager and declare victory than it is to rebuild a national network architecture from scratch.
Sadly, yes.
And what is truly surreal about listening to this tape is that we actually witnessed this state-level, or at least highly organized, suppression happening live during the recording.
It's incredible timing.
While Mel, the host, is moderating this space, trying to facilitate this exact conversation about censorship and infrastructure, his account is subjected to a massive, coordinated reporting attack.
The room realizes what is happening in real time. Detractors, whom the speakers allege are part of Hector Lopez's network retaliating for being kicked out, or perhaps even state-aligned botnets trying to shut down the discussion, begin mass reporting Mel's account for various terms of service violations.
Right.
This triggers the platform's automated moderation systems, causing Mel's account to be temporarily blocked and silencing him on his own broadcast.
It is the weaponization of the platform's own safety algorithms to silence a conversation they don't like. It's a Sybil attack on a social level, using thousands of fake accounts to overwhelm the system's ability to discern real user feedback from a coordinated strike.
But crucially, the audio doesn't end in despair. In the face of this incompetence, the unjust imprisonments and the live censorship, the community immediately pivots to constructive, highly technical solutions.
Yes, the resilience is incredible. So what does this all mean? A speaker named Julio, who goes by the handle Hacker Damaso, jumps in with immediate tactical advice on fighting this algorithmic censorship.
He was very pragmatic about it.
He advises the community to utilize the platform's premium subscription tier and undergo the government ID verification process. He explains that tying a verified real-world identity to the account fundamentally changes how the platform's algorithm weighs user reports, severely limiting the effectiveness of automated bot reporting bans.
It's a fascinating cat-and-mouse game. But Julio's contributions go far beyond platform survival tactics. He actively shifts the narrative from destruction, from dumping databases and writing RAETs to creation.
I loved this part.
He details how he is using his deep technical skills for undeniable social good. He explains that he has built an anti-accomplices system, an anti-accomplice digital tool.
And what does that do?
This software is specifically designed to track and aid kidnapping victims, which is a massive, violent reality in parts of Latin America.
And the wildest part. He claims this system is currently being evaluated by the Mexican Attorney General's office, the FGR.
Which is just ironic.
The very same government whose infrastructure this community is hacking, criticizing, and mocking for being a hack the box is quietly evaluating the custom tools built by these hackers to solve real-world life-or-death violence. The hypocrisy and the symbiosis are just staggering.
It highlights the complex reality of the region. The state lacks the internal talent to build these tools, so they have to rely on the very underground ecosystem they publicly condemn.
And Julio doesn't stop with software. He also discusses a hardware engineering project he is developing, an open-source 3D printable 110-volt portable energy generator.
A free energy generator.
Right. How does that even work?
He explains that it uses neodymium magnets. It relies on the principles of electromagnetic induction, specifically Faraday's law.
Sounds like high school physics, but advanced.
Essentially, yes. When you pass a magnetic field through a coil of conductive wire-like copper, it induces an electrical current in that wire. By using incredibly strong neodymium magnets arranged in a specific rotating configuration, often driven by a small, highly efficient physical input or even environmental kinetic energy, he is attempting to create a localized, sustainable power source.
And his goal isn't to patent this and become a billionaire. His goal is to distribute the blueprints open source, for free, so impoverished communities that lack reliable electricity, or communities where the power grid has failed due to the exact infrastructure incompetence we've been discussing, can 3D print their own power grids.
That is true hacktivism.
I have to marvel at the duality of this community. In one breath, they are writing polymorphism into Golang malware to tear down sovereign government infrastructure, extracting databases, and fighting these bitter, toxic feuds where they threaten each other's livelihoods.
And in the very next breath, the exact same people are writing code to track down kidnappers and designing open-source physics projects to bring free electricity to the poor. It is incredibly complex. You cannot paint them as simple villains or pure heroes.
They are a product of their environment. When the state fails to provide security, infrastructure, or justice, the technologists step in to fill all those roles simultaneously, as vigilantes, as criminals, and as saviors.
Well said.
And Daniel Hill, the Uruguayan journalist who went to prison, proposes a final, grand solution to unify this complexity. He suggests using real-time AI translation, instantly converting live audio between English and Spanish.
His vision is to bridge the massive communication gap between the Anglo and Latin American tech communities.
Which is huge.
He believes that the English-speaking cybersecurity world operates in a bubble, largely unaware of the raw innovation and the daily survival tactics being developed in South America. He argues that by removing the language barrier with AI, they can build a stronger, united global front against both cybercrime and state overreach.
It's a brilliant, optimistic idea in a sea of cynicism.
It is. But we must also consider the darker implications of Daniel's story of being jailed and Mel being censored live on the air.
Yes, the concept of digital exile.
Exactly. The true danger highlighted in this recording isn't just the hackers roaming free in vulnerable systems or even bespoke weapons like Fleckery R7. The ultimate danger is the state's, or an organized mob's, ability to manipulate the architecture of truth.
When a government can cover up its own massive data breach by jailing an innocent teenager, or when a disgruntled rival can silence a journalist or a host by exploiting automated mass reporting algorithms, the reality of what is happening can be entirely erased.
Digital exile is the modern equivalent of being erased from the public record. If you cannot speak on the platforms where the public gathers, and if the state controls the narrative of why their systems failed, accountability dies.
And why does this matter to you, the listener, sitting perhaps thousands of miles away from Mexico or Uruguay, listening to this on your commute or at your desk?
You might think this is an isolated regional problem, but it's not.
Not at all.
The tools of censorship, the exploitation of algorithms, and the fundamental failures of digital infrastructure do not respect physical borders. The suppression tactics being tested and refined in Latin America today are the exact blueprints for global digital suppression tomorrow.
A vulnerability in an open-source library discovered in Mexico is a vulnerability in a corporate server in London, Tokyo, or New York. The ecosystem is entirely, inextricably interconnected.
Yep.
The malware developed to bypass a poorly funded Uruguayan defense network will eventually be repurposed to target your local hospital's network.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today. We have journeyed through a truly wild, undocumented digital landscape.
We really have.
We started by looking at the creation of bespoke, highly commercialized digital weapons like Fleckery R7, sold openly on social media by developers rationalizing their complicity.
We examined the astonishing, almost comical fragility of government systems, where a simple prompt injection can defeat national infrastructure, leaving entire nations waiting to be exposed on the world stage of the upcoming World Cup.
We waded through the toxic, deeply personal rivalries of the hacking underworld, watching self-proclaimed ethical hackers be excommunicated by their peers for extortion and theft.
And finally, we heard the desperate pleas for unity, open-source innovation, and cross-cultural communication to fight back against state censorship and systemic incompetence.
And as a final reminder to our listeners, it is crucial to state again that the political allegations discussed today, the specific claims against the Mexican president, the involvement of named politicians, and the supposed infiltration by international intelligence agencies are the views and accusations of the speakers in the source material.
Right, we have to be clear on that.
They are not verified facts endorsed by this show. We are presenting the conversation as it occurred, as a window into a hidden world.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, we started this deep dive talking about vault doors. We expected to find absolute steel, and instead we found a bead curtain. What are we left with?
I want to leave you with a lingering question to ponder as you go about your day. We spend so much time worrying about the grand cinematic threats. We worry about artificial intelligence becoming sentient and deciding to destroy humanity. We worry about monolithic, omnipotent tech corporations stealing our data with flawless, inescapable precision.
The big sci-fi fears.
Exactly. But building on what we've learned from listening to these underground hackers today, what if the greatest threat to our modern way of life isn't a sophisticated, high-tech cyber war?
What if the real threat is just the sheer, mundane, foundational incompetence of the very institutions we trust to protect our most sensitive information?
Right. If a teenager with a clever text prompt can break a state system, are we already living in a post-security world without even realizing it?